Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Tonight we're going to do a project proposal for podcasting with Chance and Brian, who are going to talk about their plan to spearhead a podcasting series on indie gaming. The process is pretty straightforward. John Fentiman, the great John Fentiman, our editor-in-chief, is going to be asking a series of questions to Brian
Yeah,
and
you're
Chance.
going out again.
Crap.
Can't hear you, Fred.
John, you want to take it then? John, take it.
Oh, okay. Sure. Well, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start asking some questions here. So right now, during this part of the session, we ask that everybody other than Brian and Chance and Fred mute their mics. So just so that, if you have any questions, whisper Fred, and he'll take care of that. But I'm going to start asking these questions, and Brian and Chance are going to start explaining about what their project is all about. All right.
Okay, oh, 1 second. Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
it's
it is important to mention
Yes,
that
sir.
if you're going to whisper Fred, whisper him on Skype.
Yes. Whisper me on Skype, and please do so because then when we open to the Q&A, I'm gonna give you the floor. So when questions or even comments, it doesn't have to be a question, but a question or a comment pops up in your head, just write it to me on Skype. If you don't have my Skype ID, I'm gonna put it in the vent channel right now, in the chat section. Put your name on it. This way I know who it is. Start with your name, your first name, your question or your comment, and then when we open to the Q&A, I'll give you the floor. All right, John, go ahead.
All right. So just to start off with, Brian and Chance, could you describe briefly, like under 2 minutes, what the concept and purpose and philosophy of your show is going to be all about?
I guess I'll take this one to start with. Basically, we're going to do a podcast on indie games, the culture behind them, and the sort of way they're developed and the way gamers view them, because we feel that it's a very intimate sort of, you get to feel like you know the developer and you know the game and it speaks directly to you. So indie games is a very good platform for us to do our podcast on.
Sure.
And
Well, no, keep going. Go ahead.
Um, so we don't want this to be one facet where it's from the gamer's point of view, and we don't want it to be one facet where it's the developer point of view. We want to take into account all the different things that make indie games great. And I think maybe Chance has something to add to that, but I think that pretty well sums up the first question.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. We're just going to try to make a podcast for, the people that may not be largely informed on indie games and may not know where to start or, what to do or really what they're about, what's new and going on in them. And, we're just going to try to bring some light to all that.
So basically, you want a podcast for Fred, who knows nothing about indie games. Yeah. Sure. All right. Well, as far as the frequency, duration, and the timeline of the actual podcast, how are you planning on doing it? How often are you planning on doing the show? Like, are you planning on having it daily, weekly, monthly, bi-monthly? And in addition to that, how long do you think each episode is going to run?
That's one of the things we've talked a lot about. We want it to be very concise. We don't want to have a lot of rambling. I can do that pretty quickly, so we want to have it very much more like a talk show than a podcast. We want to keep it to about 45 minutes per episode. We want to do that about 30 to 45, somewhere in there. We want to do once every week, and we want to end each month with a bigger episode, an episode that sort of sums up. We want to do sort of basically 4 episodes that tie into one singular theme, and then end it with one slightly longer episode that has a sort of climax to the whole series of that one topic.
Sure. And how often did you say you wanted to do these?
Once a week.
Okay, sure. All right. And in in how in months, how long do you think a season is going to last? So, about how many months are you thinking? Because if you're doing it once a week, so that's about 4 podcasts a month. How long is a season going to be, essentially?
Well, we were thinking, 6 months, somewhere in there would be a good number because that'd be about 24 episodes, and that would give us 6 different topics, and it would really allow us to flesh out our podcast, and then go from there. So 6 months seems like a good number of months to do the season of it.
Okay, and what did you think the common thread in the first season was going to be, the theme of it, if you will?
Um, well, we wanted to do the binding thread of it is getting indie games out there, showing people the indie games aren't just 2D side-scrolling platformers, showing them that the developers really care about the games, that they're not just guys that are too antisocial to get on with a real development team. They really care about what they're doing, and to get indie games a bit more praise among the AAA gamer, as it were.
Okay, sure. Awesome. Now, moving on to the format and the approach that you're taking, are you going to have this show live, or will it be pre-recorded? And are you also going to be doing it audio, or will there be video as well?
Chance and I have talked a lot about that. We have a very well thought out format. We want to do it in video. We want to do pre-recorded, um, still podcast style, still loose, still talking conversationally, but pre-recorded as opposed to doing it straight up live. That way we can keep it concise, keep it entertaining. And Chance may have something to add to that too.
Yeah, we didn't want it to feel really dry and cookie cutter like some of the podcasts that are only audio are. I felt sometimes like those podcasts are kind of hard to keep people involved in and, keep some attention to the general focus. So if any of you guys have seen GameBreaker.tv's podcast, we're going to do that kind of style where it's us on video being kind of loose, chatting back and forth. Definitely have a structure, but we're not going to make it feel cookie cutter. We're going to make it feel really original, really loose, because God knows that there's a million people trying to do things involving indie games out there socially. So we're going to try to make ours stick out by being the more loose, comfortable feel for people that don't know much about indie games to try to come in and feel like they can learn a few things and feel welcome in the podcast.
Okay, awesome. Well, now, as far as the feel of the show, you mentioned you didn't want it to be cookie cutter. Could you elaborate what you're going for? Like, are you thinking it's going to be more educational? Is it going to be more of a comedy show? Will it be, informational or technical? What will it be fast-paced, methodical, or is it going to be open-ended, more social-oriented? How's it going to feel to the general viewer or listener?
Well, we definitely wanted to keep the viewer in mind. We want to take their feedback, but we want to keep it very methodical. We want to keep it very focused, and we want it to be, go through. We don't want to spend 2 hours talking about one indie game. We want to keep it focused, and we want to keep it moving forward. We want to keep it informational but light. So we don't want to have a bunch of technical details unless they're necessary to what we're talking about. So we do want to have a bit of a comedic, approach to some of the things. We don't want to take everything super seriously, and we certainly don't want to be pretentious, as we know that comes up a lot in the indie game scene.
Sure, and that actually segues wonderfully into the next question. Who specifically is your audience? You kind of mentioned this before, that you're catering to a lot of people who may not have as much experience in the indie game, but is that where most of your focus is going to lie, or are you also reaching out to others? Who do you think specifically is going to be all your audience for this show?
Well, that's, we want to bring in, we don't want to alienate people who are into the indie game scene. We don't want to, say those people aren't welcome, but we do certainly want to attract the crowd that may not have been into indie games before, and we want to bring them into the fold and get them, to the enthusiast level of we really enjoy indie games, and we want to get them involved in the entire indie scene. So we want to bring those people in, and we don't want to really alienate anybody who already knows what we're talking about. So we want to keep it entertaining too.
Sure.
Yeah, and we don't want to make it seem like the hardcore indie gamer isn't welcome. We want everybody to be able to come there. So, we might have an episode that is a little more for the introductionist, but we may also have episodes that are more for, the hardcore person, but not
And
so in depth with the lingo that somebody who's new and doesn't know much about indie games can't follow along.
and if the podcast doesn't
Okay.
work, if the podcast ends up not working, you guys should consider moving to Washington D.C. because you've got lots of jobs for you politicians.
All right. So, you mentioned before that viewers were going to be important and you were going to try to listen to them. How much interaction do you want to have with those viewers? And what tools do you plan on using to facilitate that interaction, such as email, Twitch, Twitter, or not Twitch, email, Twitter, other forms of chat? How are you going to do that?
Well, we discussed a couple of options. We want to go with responding to comments on videos. We also want to be able to do more social media stuff for people who are actually more into it, as opposed to just trolling in the comments section. We want to have an interaction over Twitter, and occasionally we may do something a bit more Q&A oriented towards them, without setting it up as a podcast where we may have an interaction with them, more mano a mano, as opposed to the back and forth on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah, and another thing to mention too is that we don't want to be the type of podcasters and the type of social, God, I don't want to use the word leaders, but the kind of podcasters that you feel like the untouchables, and you can't talk to them and you can't message them and you can't bring up questions about the podcast or possible ideas for future podcasts. We definitely want to keep it open to be able to keep in touch with people and really get their feedback and make them feel like they're not only welcome in the podcast as far as viewing, but they're also welcome in the podcast as far as feedback and as far as just being kind of buddy and making them feel like, oh, I'm friends with a podcaster that has a massive following and he's still pretty down to earth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sure. Now, moving on to your group dynamics and the expectations that you have of the group, who is going to specifically be the host of your podcast, and how many co-hosts do you plan on having, and how many do you think you're going to be bringing on, and who, like, I know that there are two of you, so one of you would obviously kind of fit more in a co-host position, but who's going to be the host and who's going to be the co-host, and how many are you thinking of having?
And if I can quickly add, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, if I can quickly add, we're really jumping into the section where we want to start the community on Vent, connect with you guys. This is really when we open up to your expectations, not just for yourselves, but also from the people around you at OPnoobs and how they can contribute to the project. Go ahead.
Absolutely, we want to have we want to bring another person in. And we want to keep it conversational. So we don't want it to always be apparent that someone's leading the conversation. We want it to be a conversational type of show. When we run like a feature type program portion of it where we're talking about something specific and in depth, we might have someone leading the conversation, but it's really going to depend on who brought that piece of information to the table, who's leading the charge on that specific. So it might change a bit month to month who's actually leading that specific topic.
Yeah, and we had kind of decided that we didn't want it to be an overbearing, say I or Brian is ruling the podcast and then there's, the two co-hosts that just kind of contribute content. We want everybody to feel like we're all just a group and have it really relaxed and kind of laid back, and like Brian said, possibly featuring people who happen to have, fantastic content that fit the way that the show is going to go that week. But the third person that we were looking to bring on, we kind of talked about, was somebody that has a little bit more of a laid back comedic kind of feel, can bring the relief from the possible seriousness that indie games bring, which people can get pretty serious into indie games. So we want to have somebody in the background that can kind of help with the comedic relief and kind of help being it feel loose and not feel so strict and so restricted.
Sure. Okay. Now that kind of brings us to our next question pretty nicely. What your expectations are for a co-host, like before, during, after the show. How much time commitment are you expecting on a weekly, monthly basis? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh, certainly. We want to. We've identified a structure that we think will work. Is bringing an outline together. Going maybe once a week. We'll get together and we'll bring this sort of outline for what that week's episode is going to be, and then we want to outline it, and then we want to run a dry run where we're not running record.
I have to pick that up.
So that we can go through it conversationally once over the outline and follow it and see if we can get it down to time. And then, sorry, and then after that do the recording. So it might be a little bit,
Yeah, and we
a little bit of
understand,
time
just
that
like
you're going to have
OPnoobs
to
does,
invest
that
in it, but we
everybody's
think
got a
it'll be
life
worth
and
it because
everybody's
it'll
got
give a
things
really
going
high
on. So
quality
I mean, if
product.
you say join on, we're not going to make you, commit to the 60 hours of slaving a week that John and Fred are. We're going to give you amp time to write down content and to work with us and get dry rehearsals done and make sure we really feel like it's going to be a loose kind of easygoing podcast. But we're not going to work you to the bone, but we're definitely going to want you to put in some time as far as rehearsing with us and making sure you really know what the content is and you really know what the podcast is, because as Fred and John have said a couple times, we only want to produce the best at OPnoobs, and we want to make sure that whoever's on with us is on the same page and making sure that they're ready for the responsibilities of running a podcast for the next foreseeable fair chunk of time.
Yeah,
Sure.
the noobs part is highly ironic.
All right. So now, what do you guys think that you personally bring to the show that you're currently making? And I know you've been talking a lot about having a comedic person. Is there anything else that you think is missing for you to have a well-balanced show? And what specifically, is there anything more than the comedic element that you're looking for in a potential co-host as far as personality is concerned?
Well, we're not focusing on comedic. What we really want is someone who's upbeat and who can keep the show going. We don't, Chance and I could probably ramble about one specific topic for hours if we wanted to. We need someone who can keep us going and keep us on track as a group. And that's going to be someone who's upbeat and they're friendly and they're they can be witty at times. And comedic just comes with an upbeat personality. I mean, someone who has comedic timing may not say anything funny for a while, but you're going to like watching it. They're going to be entertaining and they're going to keep things going.
Essentially, they want their own Fentiman.
Yeah. And as far as what we bring to the table, I mean, Brian definitely brings the background in indie game knowledge. He definitely brings the total indie fanboy. He's kind of the guy that's going to be a lot of where our content is coming from and a lot of where our structure is coming from. But I mean, I bring the technical aspect and I bring the conversation, and I feel like we both together have some good indie knowledge, but we want somebody else who doesn't necessarily have as much indie knowledge as we do, but is able to keep up and knows what they have to do as far as research, because you can do a podcast on any specific topic, but being that indie is so broad, we want somebody that definitely has a head on their shoulders and can keep level with all of the content that we're going to have to sift through for weekly shows.
Sure.
Yes, I have 5 minutes left.
Sure. Now, other than finding a co-host, are you also looking for artistic and and technical support on the show? And if you can, what's in it for the people who would help you? Just as a like beyond your sincerest thank you, is there anything in it?
Fame and
Well,
glory.
doing the the technical side of it is going to really help someone's portfolio if they develop an editing or an artistic
And
side of it.
you need that. You need that for your show.
We may need additional support. I have a lot of the editing stuff covered. I've done, a year or so of broadcast journalism study and stuff, so I know a little bit about it. But, if we brought someone who knew After Effects really well to the table, that would be, superb because, I'm not super proficient in After Effects, but, that's getting into the technical side of it. I can bring it down to a pretty rough cut and then send it off to someone if they want to join in. If not, I can muscle it out myself. But bringing someone else in might make a more polished product. So that really helps their portfolio, that they have a collaboration effort, that they've edited, and they have something really good to show for it.
Yeah, and we definitely feel like we've got the artistic and technical aspect down, but anything helps as far as making the podcast. And if people have really good contributing ideas, we're not opposed to hearing them and trying to incorporate them. We definitely want it to be a community-oriented thing.
Keep moving, guys. We've got like 3 minutes before we open to
Are you
Q&A.
saying something, Fred?
Yeah, keep rolling. Keep going.
Oh, sure. Now, as far as the next steps are concerned, what is your plan of action and timeline to produce the pilot for the show? Because we know you need a pilot for this.
Sure. Sorry, I was coughing there. What we're wanting to do is we're wanting to run through a basic outline that we can do for an internal pilot that we don't give to you guys, that we, look at ourselves, we critique it, and then we go over it and we make something completely better, and then maybe do that just after launch. This is a pretty ambitious project that we're working on, so I don't know that we'd be able to get something right at launch, because we want to go through and we want to make something really good and then make it better before we give it to you guys. We don't want to meet your expectations, we want to exceed them.
And also with content, we want to stream things a little bit closer to the launch and things that are going to be a little bit more up to date. So we'll have a rough outline and we'll have a rough pilot, but we'll be updating the content a little bit closer to release, so we're a little more on time with not only the release but what's coming out then, so our podcast isn't behind.
Okay, so kind of a fluid date of start for when you'd want to start your season and when you're submitting your pilot then, is what you're telling me right now?
Right, we're looking to maybe submit the pilot, maybe, what would it be, the first of the month, perhaps, and then going from there, maybe towards the mid to end to start the season. We don't want to, rush ourselves, because haste makes waste, so we want to give ourselves plenty of time.
Okay,
yeah, and we
great.
also don't want to rush it in the sense that, there's a lot of other project proposals going on, and people may want to be releasing closer to launch just for the fact that they want to have content on the website. But we don't want to rush it in the sense that there's going to be other podcasts, and we know that. And we know that if we take a little bit extra time to make it better, it's going to turn out better for us and OPnoobs in the end.
Okay, awesome. And final question. It's kind of a two-pronger. How can you be reached following this call for people who are interested? And what process do you have in place to screen the people who may want to get involved?
I'll let Chance take how to be reached. Email's always going to work for me, but Chance may have some other things that work better for him.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier too, right before we got on the call, but like I'm the kind of person that when I get home, I'll turn on my computer, I immediately open my Skype, I immediately open my Ventrilo, I immediately open my TeamSpeak. We've both got smartphones, so we check our email 4 or 5 times a day. So really, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. If you want to, like, say for me, example, I'm open to people sending me a text or an email or getting a hold of me on Skype or getting a hold of me on Ventrilo. It's just coming to us in a way that you feel comfortable, but we'll definitely try to keep our options open so we're not just funneling everything into solely just emails.
And the last part, what process do you have in place to screen the applicants?
It partly depends on how many applicants we end up with, but I'll keep it brief. Basically, we want to bring them into a call that we can go one-on-one with them, we can maybe run through a pretend podcast or something, and then we'll screen those people, and then Chance and I'll talk it out, and we'll figure out who's going to work best. But we want someone we can have a conversation with, and who can keep us going. We've rambled a lot, and we've almost squandered our whole time away, so we need someone who can keep us going and on task.
Yeah, and we definitely want to make sure that they're loose feeling and really comfortable with, having a longer conversation and being involved with a couple different topics on a podcast.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys, for taking the time. I think, Fred, if you want to take over from here and maybe open the floor a little bit.
If you guys can hear me, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yeah, you're good.
Yes.
so I'm actually going to put everybody on the spot just because I haven't had questions. Maybe the Skype thing isn't a good idea. We'll tweak that on the next call.
Now we
You
can
just
hear
cut
you.
out.
Yeah, I'm gonna text you who to. John, you keep put people you carry over the Q&A if people can hear me. Ask you've got yellow beans. Yellow beans, can you hear me? Carl.
Yeah, I can hear.
Perfect. Carl, why don't you quickly introduce yourself and give a few comments and maybe ask a question or two to this fine gentleman.
Sure. I'm the new guy. I just joined last night. I have a background in designing video games, or at least I went to school for it. I'm not really working in it right now. I think the idea for the channel sounds really good, and from what it sounds like, what you're saying is that you need somebody who will keep you on point in your discussion.
Roughly, yeah. We
Absolutely.
want somebody who's going to keep us on point and keep us on track and just kind of be the loose, relief for the show, being that Brian and I can just ramble for God knows how long.
Definitely, that's understandable. And where are you gonna find the indie games to talk about? Are you gonna get them mostly off of Steam?
It depends on what our topic is. If we're running through something like hidden gems, if we do a hidden gems week or something like that, we might do stuff that's not even on Greenlight yet. It depends on what we find. We're going to, have a whole bunch of sources, and we're going to figure out what the best stories or thing we can talk about is.
Yeah, and we're also going to have related podcasts on things like older indie games, kind of the top 10 classics, what's new and coming out right now, what's really hot, like Brian said, what's not in Greenlight, what is, concepts, things like that. We're just going to kind of bounce all over the place when it comes to indie games.
But
All right,
again, keeping to that common thread.
Yeah, okay, so it's gonna be a theme for the week, and then you're gonna build your games around that theme.
More or less,
we're
yeah.
gonna try to keep to the. We're gonna go with a month theme, so it might be first-person shooter month or something like that. But we'll try to tie every week in with something else that adds to that theme. But we're gonna try to keep it by the month so that we have more of a focus in our podcasts.
Awesome, definitely. That sounds like it works better. The only thing is getting in depth with the games. So I guess you're gonna be talking about like 3 different games a week then. So you're gonna need a lot of stuff to say about them.
We might be talking about one specific franchise, a developer. Our end goal is we actually want to try to get indie developers themselves into the podcast. That's one of the things we certainly can't do it all the time, but we would like to have them join us when they're relevant and when they're available. So we want to keep it pretty tied together and pretty focused.
I think it sounds great. If it was put to a vote, you'd definitely have mine.
He's a nice guy.
We've got ours too.
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit from Kyle Coleman. Kyle, you here? If he's not, we'll move. Kyle? We lost him.
Maybe he is still muted.
Yeah, that's why I'm giving him a few seconds. Daniel, are you here? Daniel.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got some stuff I could say.
Yeah,
What's up, guys?
Daniel, go ahead, introduce yourself first, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, I just joined last night as well. Um, I'm really stoked on this. I'm actually wanting to get involved. Um, Indies are a big thing to me too. It all started with the movie, Indie Game the movie. As soon as I saw that, just like,
Oh yeah.
wow, this just opens my eyes to like different kind of gaming. And what you were saying about like indies have a lot more soul to them, like I totally agree with that. It really makes you feel connected with that developer. And being from New York, like indies like a big thing here, so it just fuels my passion for that for indie games.
You got any questions for them?
And
Go ahead.
well, I just wanted to say real quick that kind of passion that Daniel is bringing, being really involved in indie games, and wanting to not only know more but be involved in a current podcast to podcast basis where we're talking about new content possibly and we're talking about new things. But it's also important to mention that Brian and I will both put our Skype names in the chat so you can see those and you can have a way to contact us afterwards. But at least for me, I'll stay on Skype a little bit longer afterwards. So if anybody wants to know more about getting in touch with us, then we can stay on, just so everybody knows.
Awesome. Dennis, are you here, Dennis?
Yeah, I'm here.
What's going on, Dennis? Thanks for joining in. You want to
I arrived a little bit late, so I'm still trying to like come up with something to say.
figure out what it is we're doing? All right, man. You,
Yeah, kinda, sorta.
is Eddie here? Necromine.
I've been waiting.
What's going on, Eddie?
Yeah, nothing much, but I've been really paying attention, and this sounds
Introduce yourself.
spectacular.
Introduce yourself first, man.
Sorry, just this energy. But anyways, um, Necromine is my tag for everything. My name's Eddie, and I didn't join yesterday. I've been here for a while, but I've been dealing with my computer right now. Just switched out a motherboard, so I'm in a streaming predicament. But I hope I can at least help someone else. I don't have to necessarily stream, but as long as I can help you guys out, I'm willing.
Awesome.
But I have some points that I kind of want to come. While y'all were talking, that I jotted down. Since it's a podcast, right? And it's gonna be uploaded to YouTube, since it's gonna be pre-recorded.
Um, we would like to upload it to YouTube, possibly as well Daily Motion and those sorts of sites. We don't want to keep it just to YouTube. I mean, it's original content, so we could put it on wherever that streams videos.
Yeah, right. Get a broader audience that way, of course, not just one place. But I was thinking, why not like a live one? Because I know you said you want to have like interactions with people, have a Q&A. I was thinking like, well, I was curious. Why not a live one where you can have people asking some questions or anything like that? Like maybe dedicate like 5 or 10 minutes after once everyone's done talking, to have subscribers on Twitch or people asking something they might be on their mind.
Well, there's nothing that says that we won't try to do, a live special every now and then, but we wanted to try to make it really social media based, so people who have questions and feel who people like they feel like they want to approach us, they have multiple ways to do it. But I mean, I definitely think we're not opposed to talking about a live special, maybe once a month or once every 5 or 6 episodes, something like that. But it's definitely something that we'll keep in mind.
Right, and I mean, we would be willing to. The reason we don't want to keep the show live is because we want to keep it focused. We don't want to run 2 hours talking about the same thing, because we want to keep people involved. We want to keep people paying attention on it. If we have a movie-length podcast every week, no one's going to pay attention to us. We're just going to kind of fall into the background. So if we have a half-hour, 45-minute podcast once a week that's it's pre-recorded, we could bring questions from Twitter at the end of the episode and then answer them, at the end of the episode. It doesn't have to be just a pre-recorded, this is this. Now you can ask us questions and we'll answer them to your face or to your account. We can answer questions in the video. They just wouldn't be live.
And if you'll let me
Yeah,
add,
we definitely want to keep.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
If you want to let me add, I think this is a very mature approach. It's a mature approach because we're trying to produce quality, and at the same time, we don't have much experience in what we're doing. So the idea to pre-record gives you the ability to edit your stuff. And through the editing process, you can refine it. You can also listen to yourself and check out what you're good at and what you need to practice on. I tend to encourage that philosophy of let's produce something so good. Let's start with something that's pre-recorded, and as we build confidence in what we're doing, we're going to jump into the live stream. So I very much respect that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we definitely want to let people know that we don't want to stray from the community aspect. Despite being pre-recorded, we still want to be very community-based if we can.
And you can, because
And
you have
that's sort of the difference between.
you can use the emails. You can let your people say email us and we'll pop up your questions next week. That's a practice that's common out there. A lot of podcasters do it. I think it's a good approach and it's just as effective.
Oh yeah, sorry. Like everyone, I don't even know when to start. Everyone was talking, but no, yeah, yeah, it's understandable. That's really good. Yeah, 'cause that way you can actually, you could say, analyze what everyone's doing, and be able to edit out. Um, just I guess when it's taking a while to come to the next topic or anything like that.
Exactly.
Another one. I'm glad it came up at the end though. I kind of jotted down is like that you can have like a developer, especially for like the end of the month or something like that as well. Have
Yeah, and we want to definitely show that developers, especially for indie games, aren't the kind of people that aren't approachable because, many of them are, and we want to definitely show that. Like, not only are indie games very diverse and they're very user friendly most of the time, but that a lot of the developers are user friendly as well, and that they will come on and talk about their games and things like that. But I mean, that is all something that's definitely down the road when we get more comfortable and we have a little bit more of a following.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Yeah, can I get Andrew to Andrew, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Andrew, you want to say a few things, a few impressions of this proposal, and maybe if you want to introduce yourself quickly and ask you a couple
Oh, yeah,
questions.
sure, no problem. I mean, these guys have got a great proposal going on. I mean, I love the indie focus. One of the things that I really like about the indie development community is that they're very open to talking to people who want to, promote their games. I mean, if I had one thing I would point out, guys, don't be afraid to contact these people, these developers, and just say like, hey, we've heard about your game. It looks wicked awesome. We're doing a podcast. We don't have a lot of followers yet, but will you at least talk to us? You'd be surprised how many of them are going to go out of their way to talk to you. I mean, just don't be afraid, guys. Reach out and grab for those, interviews. Try and get them, because I mean, I used to go to PAX on a regular basis, yearly, and they had an entire indie corner, and every one of the developers was sitting there talking up their game, and they would shake your hand. I mean, indie is the place to be on this sort of thing. And, if you're looking for somebody who's jokey and friendly and all that fun stuff, maybe just talk to me later.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, we definitely want to keep the main focus is that, not like Blizzard devs where you only see them at a panel and you only get to talk to them when they're willing to talk to you. We want to show people that indie devs are friendly and that they're willing to talk to people about their games and that they're willing to not only promote but, get involved in something as simple as an indie video game podcast, because there are many out there, but there honestly aren't a lot that are successful, and we're the ones that want to break the streak and become very popular.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if I can add, it's not that we're scared of contacting them yet. For me, the fear is that I treat certain developers, certain studios, even like Double Fine. I think of them, they're like rock stars, and I'm scared that I would treat them like that and not ask them poignant questions, because you do have to be good at interviewing. You can't just and when I was talking to John last week, he mentioned this. You've got to be able to talk to them on level. You can't just go in and just gush like they're your superhero or something. You got to be able to talk to them. So for me, I want to be able to feel comfortable doing that, and I think maybe in the second run, so on the eighth episode or something, having an indie developer wouldn't be out of the question. It's going to be a scheduling thing too. So there are a couple of reasons, but I'm not worried at all about contacting them. And you make a great point. A lot of them are very approachable. Phil Fish isn't.
Oh, well, I was
Kind of a
talking about
jerk.
fish.
Fizz.
You got to keep in mind that not all of them are nice people. They're people like the rest of us. But um, we do want to bring certain people on the show, whether they're nice or not. We want to have that conversation. So we like the community and we want to be part of it.
Yeah, and
And
it,
we want to make
I'm
sure.
right there with you. Just your celeb scared sort of showed.
yeah, and
Yeah, we don't want to be all fanboy, but we also want to make people definitely aware that people do have lives outside of podcasts and OPnoobs and indie developers especially. They're
nonsense.
working fairly often depending on the developer.
Yeah. Hey, and just a side note, so you guys don't get any idea, Andrew's already been stolen for the official podcast.
Oh, I had an
Oh yeah, I
idea.
forgot to mention that.
No, just in passing. That was it. Alisa, are you here, Alisa? Do I say your name?
Hi,
I mean, I don't say anybody's name correctly because of the accent, but how do you pronounce your name, Alisa?
Alyssa.
Okay, Alisa.
You're
Alisa,
close.
yeah, close enough. Elisa is our very first girl gamer, so I'd give it a round of applause right here. Thanks, Elisa, for joining us, for being our first lady, our ambassador. Thank you so much. Elisa, why don't you introduce yourself quickly and talk a little bit about your first impressions on this fine gentleman.
Okay. Well, like you said, my name's Alyssa, and I do play games. I play a wide variety of games. I'm not super into indie games. I don't play them often, so the fact that you'll kind of cater to people who don't know much about them is actually kind of cool, because then I'll understand what's going on. But I did kind of have one question. Were you guys going to just talk about games in general, indie games wise, or were you going to touch base on like the game design, the art, the music? Like, is there going to be specific things about the indie games?
I have already thought of a whole piece on the Unity engine, a whole feature that I want to do on the Unity engine. So I do want to talk about more than just the playing aspect. We could even do a whole piece on our game's art based on nothing but the indie scene. So I do want to be inclusive of other topics other than just games in general. It's a little bland, and we have to. It takes many parts to make a whole, so we have to touch base where it's necessary, and not and cut out what isn't. But where it comes up, that's where we'll put it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we definitely noticed that a lot of the indie games that are already in podcast form and are already in somewhat of a social networking forum, they do kind of dryly focus on just things like gameplay and new games that are coming out. And we want to have ideas for specials on things like you said about art and music and game design and certain engines and what developers prefer to use over others. Little things like that. We're definitely going to have specials kind of spread out over every facet of indie gaming.
Does that answer it?
Yeah, actually, that's to the point. And thank you.
Thanks, Elisa. I do have a quick question, actually, personally. Something I feel like we haven't touched on. For us guys, we really came up with the concept of OPnoobs especially when it comes to interviewing agents.
Cut out,
Yeah,
Fred.
you went out again.
Crap. Um, what is your? Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much focus are you going to put on the games themselves, and how much focus are you going to put on the world of developers, their aspirations, their frustrations, competing against the AAAs? What balance are you going to find between the games and the people behind it?
We want to tie it together. We don't want to put a straight percentage on it. We want to put the parts in where they fit. we're going to be communicating to gamers, not to indie developers. So we want to bring them into it. So we're probably going to be talking a lot about the games, but we also want to educate them on where it came from. Because if you're into indie games, there is at least a 10% chance that you're also interested in game development. If you're a gamer, if you're a gamer who plays on PC, there's a good chance that you're interested in game development. That's just how it tends to go. Everyone who plays games on the PC tends to look at game development at least once. So we do want to encompass a little bit of the development side, and we want to bring that into how it plays out in gameplay. I have more experience playing games than developing them, so I'm probably going to talk more about playing games than
But
developing them.
but it's one of your key philosophical questions to explain the phenomenon. If that makes sense. How is it possible in 2014, when technology is at its best, when we've made progress that's bringing games in 3 dimensions with Oculus Rift and all this good stuff that's going to bring us into the most immersive experience we've ever experienced? How is it possible that at the same time comes the phenomenon of indie gaming that looks like games that come straight out of your Game Boy? Do you see what I mean? And I'm not trying to be insulting, quite on the contrary. I think it's fascinating, and I think there is a deeper question at large here, which connects to your audience, which connects to the community. But are you going to try and focus are you going to try and focus on this very question?
Could I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just I mean, yeah, you're right. Like 3D, like games are looking amazing, everything about that. But as far as like my opinion, being really big into indie, it's not all about what the game looks like. A lot of indie gamers, they want challenge. Like they want games that like kicked your ass when you were a kid and you played like uh I don't know, like the older Super Nintendo games, like Spy Hunter. That game was fucking hard. They want challenge, and a lot of these newer games are just cinematics and press X to do this really quick.
Yeah, but not all of them
Yeah, and
are.
we definitely want to focus. Well, we definitely want to focus on all of that, and kind of try to tie it in when we can. But I do think that technology and the direction that it's moving in is a big focus, and when we can, we'll try to touch on it. But like you said, with the visual aspect, a lot of gamers don't care. For a lot of people that don't know, we want to emphasize that indie games aren't all 8-bit, really old-looking games. They're not all games that look like Pit Fighter.
Right. We want to bring to the table that a lot of games that you wouldn't think are indie are indie. We
Yeah.
want to bring to the table that indie is just a it's just a word that you use when you don't have a publisher. But I think there are 1,001 great retro podcasts out there. Amazing. We cannot possibly hope to compete with things like Classic Game Room and AVGN. And if it comes down to indie games that look like 8-bit puzzle platformers, all I can say is nostalgia. And if you want to know about the phenomenon of nostalgia, you go to a retro game area that focuses on that. What we want to focus on is that yes, there is a nostalgia aspect to it, but there's also a different aspect in that indie games is this vast world. Double Fine produces indie games. They're not considered a publisher, therefore when they publish a game on their own, it's an indie game. Psychonauts, an amazing indie game. Assetto Corsa, which is in early access on Steam, an amazing, amazing game. Sim Racer, one of the best looking sim racers ever created, and it's an indie game. So
Okay, I like it.
some of them do look like that. Wait, sorry about that.
No, I like it, and I'm playing the devil's advocate, because I find that tension between those two words very interesting to approach, thematically, not necessarily because I have a personal conviction, I have my personal thoughts on this, but outside of what I like to game, I think that very debate is very engaging, very interesting. But I want to move to, we've got 2 last people that I would like to have talk, Tom and Kyle. Kyle, are you back? texted me.
Nope.
Ah, he eludes
So
us.
it's not seen.
Maybe he's losing us.
He is.
Tom, are you here? Tom,
Oh,
we've lost everyone.
We bored him to death.
they were both like, nope, not
Is that Tom?
But yeah, to touch on some things that Brian said also. We also want to point out some of the games that people may have played that they thought that game was just fucking weird, or that game was awesome, and then tell them, hey, do you know that was an indie game? And then they oh, what, I'm playing an indie game. Like if anybody's ever played the Stanley Parable on Steam, that is the weirdest game, and it makes no sense, and it frustrates you, but it excites you at the same time. But almost nobody would know right off the bat that isn't used to indie games that is an indie game.
Okay, guys. Unless you guys, Chance and Brian, have anything left to say, I want to close the call. I'm gonna close the call with a last
Oh, Kyle's
opportunity.
back.
Yeah,
Kyle, are you?
sorry, I had to change the input on my mic.
Kyle, if you want to just add a quick question before we close the call.
But no, I don't really have any questions for you guys. I just want to say, to me, it sounds like it's going to be a great idea. I personally am not a big indie gamer, so I'm really looking forward to the content that you guys are going to be creating here.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I just want to say one more time to everybody before Fred closes the call. Like I said, Brian and I are looking for a third, and we're very approachable. We're both really easygoing guys that take all the feedback that we can, and other than Skype and things like Vent, like I said, I put my Skype name in the chat, so if anybody wants to pop in there at any point and grab that, so they have another way to contact me other than just Vent, and Brian will put his down there as well. But feel free to approach us by email or by Skype with any ideas that you guys have. We'll start screening people once we have enough people applying for the position, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Hey, could you put your name back in the Skype, back in the chat real quick?
Or on the chat event, probably better.
Yeah, that's what we were doing. But it
Okay.
when it cuts off everything before you join, so I think he just wanted it in there again. But
It's okay, guys. I just want to.
Well, I was gonna.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna add one last thing is that we don't have any quality set in stone, so just we want to talk to you one-on-one, so just send us a message. It's not a big deal if you don't feel like you have those qualities. Message us anyway.
Yeah.
We don't have an idea on who we really want yet. We just want people to apply and kind of go from there and see if we can find the gem that helps us out.
Yeah, guys, unless I cut off, I do want to close it. It's very important for us that we always keep it under an hour. People's time is valuable. First of all, I want to thank Brian. I want to thank Chance. I want to thank you, John, for putting this together and going through with it. I want to thank the whole community for coming together once again, showing their interest. A lot of you. Am I going out? A lot of you are showing up even though you don't have a specific interest in indie gaming. I want to say we truly appreciate that, the support you're bringing to us and the excitement. So that's just a big thank you from all of us here who are working so hard on making this thing happen. The next thing I want to touch on very quickly is we're asking you to come forth, push forth. You've seen how it happens. It's pretty straightforward. We prepare you so that you know the questions in advance. Come up with your own idea and let's build some content for the website, and let's work together on making something that feels loaded with good stuff that dissociates us from other big companies. Right now we're a project, but who knows what the future holds. We've gone from 10 guys to 45 guys in the lapse of 2 weeks and a half. We're gonna keep having the same type of momentum, and I guess I'm saying all this now because we never hold your hand. We're never going to send you an email say, hey, do you want to do something for the website? We kind of want to encourage it just through your enthusiasm. And I'm guessing that the people who are coming on those calls are the type of people who want to produce their own stuff, who have this curiosity about what we're doing and want to engage. So I hope that the system is valid. I hope you guys are going to disconnect and maybe play some Diablo 3 and Battlefield 4 with us right now and and just kick back and have a drink. No more intellectual conversations about the debate between indies and triple A's, and let's go play some triple A. Sorry, John.
Fred and his drinks.
Yeah, but that's the bulk of it. Thanks everybody. If you guys want to connect with us, if you lose Brian and Chance's email, send me an email, send John an email, and we'll put you guys in touch. No problem. Thanks everybody for coming in, and have a good night.
Have a good one.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.